Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing really well, and today we've got two Lagavulins to review on the channel. We have the Lagavulin 10 year and the 16 year. Now why did I choose these two? Well, I realised I hadn't reviewed the 16 year on the channel yet, and I have the 8 and the 9 as well, but I believe the 10 is the best review to do as they're the most similar. They're both bottled at 43%. Obviously the age gap is the shortest, but also they look identical. It's purely the Lagavulin 16 is a darker shade than the Lagavulin 10, which is just pure white on the labelling. The colour of these two whiskies, I don't know if you can tell from there, but there's really not much in it. The Lagavulin 16 just being a little bit darker. Now many of you probably know the 16 really well. It's arguably the quintessential Islay out there. It's probably the most famous Islay out there, and for good reason. It's a really good whiskey. Surprisingly, before I start, I'll just let you know about the pricing. The 10 year is a travel retail. I picked it up at an airport, and I believe it cost me around £40, £45, which makes it a far more affordable option than the 16, which is now, it used to be a couple of years ago, £50, but it's since had a price jump, and you won't find it for less than £75 to £85, unless you get a good deal. I managed to pick this one up for 65, but normally it's around 75 now. Having said that, travel retail isn't what it once was. In my opinion, in the last couple of years, the prices have gone up a lot, and I don't know how much this would be in travel retail now, because I've not seen it for a while. However, you can buy it just normally outside of airports, and it's actually around £70 to £80, so there's not much in it price-wise anymore, which is a real shame, because it is a good whiskey. So anyway, we'll get started now. And both these whiskies are aged the same, really just aged in ex-bourbon for 10 years, ex-bourbon for 16 years. So this review interests me actually. I'm looking forward to sampling the differences between them, because you're really going to see what happens to a Laphroaig just when it's aged longer. So a younger Laphroaig compared to an older Laphroaig with no other changes in casks or anything like that. So right off the nose, you get similar Lagavulin 8 vibes for me, which is a really strong pear note. It's a little bit salty, it's a little bit smoky, and very earthy. But that pear note gives it a really unique sweetness. A little bit of a burnt sugar, almost like a creme brulee on the nose, but the main note is going to be pear, peat, and that earthiness. But some burnt sugar, maybe faint hints of butterscotch, creme brulee on there. It's really nice. A little bit salty as well. Now the 16 for me is actually more different than I thought it would be, which is pretty cool, because this is the aging process, changing the whiskey. Clear as day. A little bit more salty, but the sweetness is very different here. I don't know if it's more sweet, but that pear note disappears for me, and it's replaced with a little bit more of a sherry note. But it's very salty as well. A little, I think it's a little bit more salty and a little bit more sweet. So the balance is really hard to pinpoint by saying it's more salty. But you get more of a charred meat, a barbecued meat on the 16 than the 10 year. So if that's something that interests you, the 16 is probably winning for you right away. I know that's a really much loved note in an Islay whiskey. A little bit on the 10 year, but mainly that pear sweetness. The 16, far more of that cured meat vibe. maybe burnt, slightly burnt, charred meat. But you're getting a bit of a sherry note in there. It's almost like a prune, a little bit of a prune in the base there. Maybe a little bit of a molasses note. Really lovely, and more different than I was expecting. I would actually say the 10-year is a little bit more, I don't want to say youthful, a little bit more of a wood sharpness to the whiskey than the 16. The 16 definitely smells, at least, more rounded and a little bit more subdued. A little bit, I think a lot of people would say a little bit more sophisticated, higher quality, but that's purely down to the aging process. On to the taste. Wow. So the taste is bringing different qualities than the nose. I'd say it's less sweet. That pear note is less on the taste. It's more salty. It's a little bit more woody, more spicy. And I'm certainly picking up a kelp, a seaweed note on that taste. It's unmistakable. So maybe acting a little bit more like a traditional islay on the taste there. Very different experience on the 16. Very different. Really interesting. The 16 follows the nose a little bit closer than the 10 does. You're not getting the prickly nature of the wood, that spicy nature. You're picking up more sweetness than I got on the 10-year as well. And that iodine, kelp, seaweed note is far less. So it's the 16 for me is less medicinal than the 10-year. On the 10-year Lagavulin, I'm getting flashbacks to the medicinal quality of a Kalila, the Kalila 12, on the taste of the 10-year here, which is a note that I love about that whiskey. So I'm really happy that it's also in the 10-year here. It's not really present in the 16-year, to be honest. In fact, that smokiness is toned down a touch as well from the 10-year. And for me, it's actually given a little bit of a black tea vibe to the 16-year, which I've never picked up on a whiskey before. So I really like that as well. So what I like about both these whiskies in their different ways is the 10-year has this almost burnt sugared pear, whereas the 16-year is giving me a bit more of a black tea vibe. So they really are quite different. Of course, if you sampled them blindfolded, you would still say the Lagavulins. But I really appreciate the differences here. And it's not as straightforward as people will make out. But maybe what a downside of the 16 is, it's going to remove that medicinal iodine quality, seaweed quality, which I personally really like. But it's going to replace it with a little bit more sweetness, a little bit less of that wood spice, but making it a little bit more of a sweet, meaty. So very quickly, I kind of want to change the videos a little bit, not really give the tasting notes of both whiskies, but mainly touch on it, but give the differences between the two whiskies. So the videos end up quite a bit shorter, so it's a bit better for you, the viewer, to watch. Basically, in short, I think the 10-year gives a lovely burnt sugar pear note. It's more woody, more spicy, a little bit more of that coastal classic islay, whereas the 16 is going to smooth off the edges. It's going to add a little bit of a sweetness to this, a different sort of sweetness to this whiskey. It's going to bring a little bit like of a prune or a date sweetness. molasses quality to the whiskey. A little bit more of that maybe burnt barbecued meat quality to the whiskey. And a lovely unique black tea vibe in here, which I love. The 10-year, on the other hand, a little bit more youthful, spicy, woody, but also it brings more of a classic iodine, seaweed, kelp note, which is really nice. So it would come down to individual preference. I think, to be honest, this one purely comes down to price. I'll be honest, if I could get this whiskey, the 10-year, for the £40 that I bought it in the airport, then I think I would give the 10-year the win today. That being said, the 16-year-old Lagavulin a couple of years ago was also £50, but it's now £75. The 10-year, I think, is also had a price increase because, unfortunately, duty-free at airports is not what it once was. The deals, they're just not really there. So I think it's obvious, really, the winner today. It has to be the Lagavulin 16. Just that more tobacco. I forgot to mention the tobacco quality in here is a little bit stronger than the 10-year. You're getting a lovely pipe tobacco with a black tea, cured meat, but all in all, a little bit more sweetness to it as well. I think you're getting a richer experience, you're getting a more sophisticated experience. And when you drink the two side by side, the 16-year-old, it does feel like you're drinking a better whiskey. So today the 16-year-old wins. Please let me know in the comments down below if you've had either of these whiskies or both and which ones you prefer. And please like the video if you found it helpful and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any more videos. And it also really helps the channel out. Thanks for watching.